Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, joining me, Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, so we took a couple week break there. So now we're back. And do you want to? The subject that you picked was escaping the not self mind. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the direction that this series is going to go in and what you mean by that.
Yeah. Well, transition happens, and we've covered a lot of territory in terms of human design, which has been our focus up till now, with random other things in there. Um, but I think what's exciting me to present or talk about going forward is maybe a more. We'll still talk about human design. We'll still talk about astrology, but um, I think what's useful for me and what I particularly excel in is the weaving of these different systems. And um, I sometimes feel that it can be a little bit insular if we're only looking at the world through the perspective of one system. And I've been exposed to many different systems. And I have this gift and this interest in synthesizing them all and seeing what the connections are between them. And I think that enriches the discussion. So that's it's going to be a little bit more free form, perhaps a little bit more creative. Um, and that's my attempt. That's what I'm aiming toward.
Okay.
Um,
So, what
I
can you
was
tell us about the not self mind? Like, what do you mean by that and about escaping it?
in human design, the not self mind is a description of what happens when we are conditioned by our environments, by our schools, just life. It just happens automatically. Um, and that conditioning usually takes us away from a authentic expression of our aligned self. So the not self mind, in human design, it arises from, it often arises from or originates from the not self or the it arises from in our undefined centers. We're particularly prone to developing not self ways of thinking. For instance, if we have an undefined mind, we might get obsessed about being clear or knowing the answer. And that obsession with certainty, which we will never have, becomes a red herring in our life. And so the not self develops in conjunction with our conditioning and with our response to our sensitivities that allow in things that are foreign to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, you said that if you were undefined in the mind, you would have this ability or this wanting to know for certain things.
Yeah, that was only an example.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all open in various areas of our charts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the theme of the undefined ajna is to look for certainty, to look for mental certainty. What can I peg certainty on?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because the undefined mind has no specific way of thinking about the world.
Mm-hmm.
But the non-self mind, it's like being caught in the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Matrix movies are now quite old, but I think that metaphor has been used and used and overused because we actually know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. So, why would we want to escape the not self mind? Like, what is it that makes us want to do that, or that drive to want to be free of it?
Because if we're trapped in a not self mind, we're not free. We're not being ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're caught up in our head, and I've been accused by many people of, get out of your head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, fuck, what does that mean? Excuse
Oh,
my language. I don't know.
whoops.
Whoops.
We don't have a
Or
blooper, Hartwell.
Or in the tarot, the Nine of Swords is often about being caught up in our internal dialogue, which,
Mm-hmm.
we we feel like we're caught up in some kind of tornado that we have no control over, and our mind runs away with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're caught up in this hell,
Mm-hmm.
produced by the not self mind. And so, if we're at all on an awakening path, it's
Mm-hmm.
like we want to escape it because we know we're not free.
Yeah. So, what does it mean to be free and to truly live your design then?
Well, this isn't just a human design question we're looking at here. We're not just looking at it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we all know instinctively whether we're free or not. Um, and we've all had moments where we felt freer than others,
Mm-hmm.
and in those moments, to some extent, that's going to be a little unique, that's going to be unique, how it impacts us. But as a general rule, I think, in those moments, life feels fresher. We feel
Mm-hmm.
more present. We
Mm-hmm.
feel, sometimes life feels scarier. Sometimes it feels more vital.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it feels more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I've had all moments like that, and so I invite everybody who's listening or ever does listen to this, to kind of think, when are the moments in my life that it felt more real?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in touch with my body, when I'm
Mm-hmm.
in touch with my breath.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why if somebody's having a panic attack, we have these, we see it on, TV shows, get a paper bag and breathe into it. It's like, pay attention to your breath,
Mm-hmm.
control your breath.
Well, your breath is life, right?
Yes. And if you can control your breath, you control your mind, which is what
Mm-hmm.
yoga says. That's what
Yeah.
yoga teaches us.
Mm-hmm.
And mantra, the word mantra, using sort of mantras in spiritual practice, mantra means protection for the mind.
Mm. So it doesn't let
So
all that garbage in. Because
sure,
you're so
yeah,
focused on the mantra, right? That you enter that void, that space of nothing, right?
yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, if like the Nine of Swords in the tarot, you're caught up in this mental spinning,
Mm-hmm.
then how do you interrupt that spin?
Mm-hmm.
Paying attention to your breath, or continually reciting perhaps a quotation from the Bible or another famous powerful quotation. These can
Mm-hmm.
act, as similarly to a mantra as well.
Yeah.
And it's um, so it's. I think this is the experience that we all want to somehow get to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll speak for myself. You can
Mm-hmm.
speak for each listener can speak for themselves and think about, what does it mean to be truly alive, to be truly awake? This is what we
Mm-hmm.
want to find a way to get to.
So how do we wake up to true authenticity then? Like what kinds of things do we do to facilitate that?
First of all, if you have the desire, I mean, if I tell you you're living in a matrix
Mm-hmm.
and you think, what are you talking about? You're crazy, you're nuts. Um, then you haven't had, then you may not have had that initial insight, which you may not have had the initial insight, which has you realize that there's a deeper or more authentic reality for us to be living from.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't had that initiating insight, then this talk that we're having might be incomprehensible to you.
Right.
So, but if you do have that insight, then waking up is often, along with that comes the desire to question everything. What is real? What is not real?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where people can get caught up in conspiracy thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and then, questioning the questioning the truth value of everything they hear, through the people in their life, the media, books, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be value in that, but I think it's missing the point,
Mm-hmm.
because the reality that we're seeking to question is the reality that our mind is presenting to us.
Yeah, because perception
So,
is reality, right? Everybody's perception is different and unique to each one of us. So,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
That's the key word, perception.
mm-hmm.
So it's not so much about penetrating the lies that might be propounded by the media or the world
Mm-hmm.
around us. It's about questioning our own perception,
Mm-hmm.
and so that we can come to trust our own perception. Um, because a person can be caught up in the lies presented by their own mind, and um, and that really has no reference, necessarily has a reference point to the external things around us. So
Right.
don't confuse questioning the world and governments and media. And this is the insight that's just come to me. It makes sense to
Mm-hmm.
me, so maybe it'll make sense to
But
somebody else.
it's about more when you're talking about authenticity, it's more about connecting to yourself and finding your center and what is true for you. So that's why these practices of, you know, doing breath work and yoga
Yes.
and connecting to your body when you're eating, like most people eat mindlessly, right? We just shovel food in, right? It's not like, oh, how is this reacting to my body? Like I think that that's the part that people are not aware of, is that that's the key, is who are
That
you?
is the key.
Mhm.
So yes, time in nature grounds us in
Mhm.
our body.
Mhm.
Exercise,
Mhm.
pranayama yoga, paying attention to our breath.
Mhm.
These ground us in the present moment. That's
Mhm.
also talked about a lot in Spiritual Leader. What does it take to be present?
Mhm.
Contemplation. That
Mhm.
is, contemplation arises when we're not paying attention to a phone or a book or a TV,
Mhm.
and when we're turning our attention towards our inner reality,
Mhm.
because that's where we find perhaps some kind of core that 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 we recognize as
Mhm.
real. And I
Yeah.
mean, I know for myself, I get caught up. I'm a big fiction reader. I can disappear for hours and days, and it's like I'm not in contact with reality, not at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
So I mean, I am not. These talks, I hope these talks are I hope to bring them alive by seeking to find my own answers to
Mhm.
these things. So, I mean, I'm in this with you. I'm
Well,
in
for
this with
everybody, it's different, right? So, like for you, you're not in touch with reality when you're reading. And for somebody who, like myself, is experiential, I get lost in the experience. So,
Mm,
it's like
hmm.
you don't want to put the book down because you don't want it to end. I don't want the experience to end because I'm enjoying it or I'm getting something out of it. So, it just goes to show how different people are, right? Yeah.
We are, and that's why you
Hmm.
have to find your own formula.
Hmm.
And that's
Okay.
why it starts with that's why it starts with your realization of I'm not free. I'm not being myself.
Hmm.
And it's not for me to say to somebody, you're not being authentic.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe that comes up in our interaction, in our conversation, maybe depending
Um,
on my relationship with that person. But
I
I
don't know if
can,
you would ever say those words, but I think you would certainly call somebody out when they were out of alignment by whatever the circumstance was. but I don't know if we would actually use those words authenticity, right? Or,
Yeah.
somebody might say, oh, that's not like you, or, something like that. But yeah.
Yes. And
Mhm.
I mean, also, it's like if you are, when we find that place within us that is authentic or that is heart
Mhm.
centered or that is present, these are different words for similar states. No, the
Mhm.
people around us recognize it and are positively affected by it. And I mean, I know that I have been positively affected by being around people who are more present than I am, who are more,
Mhm.
you know, again, there's many ways to describe it.
Mhm.
But the idea is that we can be lost.
Mhm.
And that is one way of defining what hell is. It's
Yeah.
like, why do we need to refer to a hell, that comes after this life when most people are trapped in a hell in this life?
In their mind, yeah. So
Yes.
maybe to tie it all together and the talks and stuff. So what do you find as a useful role for astrology, human design, and other kinds of systems for actually claiming your power and claiming your freedom back?
Um, I would say that these systems are purely mental masturbation. They have no use whatsoever unless you've had that, then they just become part of the matrix.
Mhm.
However, if you have the awareness of wanting to understand who you truly are, if you long for an understanding of your own uniqueness, then they can be incredibly valuable. It really, it depends.
I think
Um,
you have a lot of epiphanies when you start doing it, that there's actually a system or something out there that can actually see you, like you feel seen by these systems. I think is part of it, you know.
yeah, because it can be a little bit, it can be like a mini miracle for people.
Hmm. Yeah.
What? There's a system that actually seems to see me,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
That that can strike people as miraculous and often does.
Well, and I think especially because we're in that world of the left brain still, right? Where there's, system or logic or whatever instead of the right side. So people can grasp the system and then apply it and then kind of move more into the flow of who they are, more into that, you know, ability to see and move and be, because that's what we're supposed to do, is just be, right?
Yes. And I
Hmm.
mean, of course, I'm an astrologer. I'm a human design analyst. Everybody here knows that. So I see,
Hmm.
I see value in it, but
Hmm.
I also see value in I. It's not a. It's not an absolute.
Yeah.
The thing that saves us can enslave us.
Hmm.
The thing that drives our awakening is our desire to be awake.
Hmm.
And then if we have that desire, there are things that can aid us in that journey. And I think human design is one of the best.
Hmm.
Um,
I think what comes to me too is what you were talking about earlier, is when people speak about being woke or awakened or whatever that is. And there's so much misconception around that term and it's thrown around like crazy. But to awaken is actually to awaken to oneself and the role and the place that they
yes.
have in the world, like my purpose, why am I here? Like we're all here to discover our purpose and then use it for bettering humanity, like,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just
um,
got bombed.
you said that really well. I
Oh,
mean,
thank you.
it's life is an experience. It's not an
Hmm.
idea.
Hmm.
So we can have all these fancy ideas, but we're meant to be guided back into an experience that lives, that vibrates.
Hmm.
Where we're awake physically, we're awake it's hard to point to, isn't it? But I like what you said there.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it's about, yeah, knowing yourself and being able to experience everything the world has to offer and know who you are in it. So it's about staying who you are no matter what the experience is that's going around, right? Oh, I'll take that. Oh, I don't need that. That's in alignment for me. That's not in alignment for me. And so it makes you able to move through the world with flow, right? Like we have people that, we know that do that, right? No matter what's going on in the world around them, they know exactly who they are and how to handle things, right? And being able to let go of things and,
So yeah, they're as human design would say, it's like our decision making strategy is rooted in our design, in our
Mhm.
bodies.
Mhm.
And so we have to reclaim that if we
Mhm.
ever have a hope to be authentic.
Exactly. Well, is there any
So,
last, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say any final words before we wrap up.
so I would encourage you to embrace your experience of life and let it
Mhm.
teach you about yourself. And um, if you become intrigued by these talks, these human design talks, then take my course, take the little course, which will strongly orient you, so you know what it's saying.
Mhm.
And then share with us.
Mhm.
In these coming weeks, we're going to be developing I'm going to be developing a kind of um, a drop-in meeting place where we can share our experience together. And I mean,
Mhm.
there'll be a lot of opportunity for us to learn from each other as we talk about how each of us individually has lived and is living our experiment.
Yeah.
That experiment being our own uniqueness.
Mhm.
I'm a rowan tree. How is a rowan tree's experience different than a pansy, you know,
Yeah.
or a rose? It's like we
Right.
all are living a unique experiment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for
So,
anybody that's new that wants to book a reading with you and actually, know what their chart is and dive into their chart a little bit, they can also book a reading here at Clair-i-tea. You can just call us at 587-596-3333 or look us up on the internet, clair-i-tea.ca, and book one directly online if you choose to. So with that, we'll say goodbye, so long, and we'll see you next Wednesday when we'll see what philosophical topic comes up. All right. Bye, everybody. God bless.